Good afternoon. We'll just wait a few minutes for people to join in. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the launch of our Conscious Patterns Report. This report is a collaborative effort between ASCI Academy and Parallel. It uncovers the widespread use of deceptive patterns in popular Indian apps. Industry body nasscom is partnering with ASCI and Parallel to highlight various challenges and practical solutions in this space. Our goal today is to provide you with insights into these findings and discuss practical solutions to adopt more ethical design practices. Today, we have a diverse audience of industry professionals, brands, designers, and developers. We hope this session will inspire reflection and adoption of more conscious design choices. We have an exciting lineup for today's webinar as well, featuring insights from industry leaders and a deep dive into the report's findings. Throughout the session, feel free to submit your questions via the chat, and we will address them during the question and answer segment later in the event. Without much ado, I'd like to invite Robin Dhanwani, founder of Parallel, to present the key findings from our research. Robin, over to you, please.
Hi, everyone. And thank you so much, Namrata, for bringing me in. Super excited to be here and share something that we've been working on for a while now. So I think today we're going to be talking about conscious patterns, a study of deceptive patterns in top Indian apps. Let me start with a question to all of you. How does the screen look like when you see this? Does it look confusing? Does it look usable? It's a cab rental product. And how about this? Does it look more usable? Does it look more cleaner? Makes decision making easy? Maybe. If you see, the differences are very subtle. The differences are visual hierarchy, some typography, some colors, some copy and stuff. But essentially, in a way, we can say that we've started designing the app. And what we mean by designing it is basically we're all trying to, there are some very smart people building some really interesting products. And through design, these apps are conditioning us. When this conditioning happens in a great way, it results into products that we love. It results into experiences that impact our lives in positive ways and add a lot of value to our lives, whether it's education, food, healthcare, every aspect of life. It just makes more enriching and beautiful. But sometimes when we start using the power of design and conditioning that we have, and start misusing it, it ends up being something that we can call deceptive patterns. And deceptive patterns are basically design patterns that help you do more of what a business wants, and helps you, maybe makes you do something that you don't intentionally do. It helps you make choices that you are not doing in an informed and intentional manner. And we had this conversation. I think India has been having a lot of action in this space in the last couple of years. It all started with uh, ASCI and the Manisha's team at ASCI, putting out a paper for discussion in November 22. And then there's a series of activities that have been happening, finally, coming together in a set of guidelines that were issued late last November by DOCA. I think we also have Rohit from, who was the former secretary at Ministry of Consumer Affairs earlier. And now what we thought is that, okay, the guidelines are out. It's something that the entire industry is expected to bring together. But are they empowered to do that while minimizing any impact to the business, right? So sometimes what I feel, in fact, as a designer as well, is that many of these so-called deceptive patterns are not always intentional. They happen to be in the drive to drive business growth. But can we create a comprehensive resource? Can we come up with solutions that can support the entire industry in adopting more conscious design choices and ethical design practices, while not compromising and affecting business metrics and the goals that they're after, right? And that has been the endeavor. And the way we went about it is we started with a comprehensive analysis of deceptive tactics employed in Indian apps. And the thought process was that before we can propose anything or come up with any solutions, we need to start getting into very specific and understand, as a country, where do we stand in terms of how these practices are being used, and what is the status of the use of deceptive patterns in some of the most popular apps that we all use on our daily lives. So that's where Conscious Patterns was born. We started with a study of deceptive patterns in top Indian applications. The study is the first of its kind research in India. And here is what it took for us to come up with this. We went through 12,000 screens, 50 plus applications, and these apps altogether have over 21 billion downloads. Can you just imagine the scale of this effort? It was over 12,000 screenshots. This is a peek into how our Figma boards looked like, with tons and tons of screens that we analyzed and came to this insights. And results were collated using an inter-rate reliability test. What we mean by that is that it was not one person's biases coming into this activity. We had multiple perspectives coming in to carefully, consciously evaluate what is a deceptive pattern and what could sometimes be just subjective or opinions or be just bad design, right? And to make sure that we're doing it right, we also involved a bunch of marketers and product people in the mix to ensure that we are taking multiple perspectives into account. It's not designers who are acting as users advocate and bringing up their perspectives. So the study has diverse perspectives and very carefully chosen to come up with what we observed as deceptive patterns. And this is what we found, which was very interesting and also shocking. Out of 53 apps that we studied, 52 of them had at least one deceptive pattern. And what we're wondering is, did we all know all this while that we had some of them in apps that we're using every day? And did we know what those patterns looked like? So let's see what these deceptive patterns look like, just to kind of refresh our memories. If you're trying to order a chicken biryani, and when you go to your about to place your order and you see that the amount seems higher than you thought, that could be a deceptive pattern. If you're trying to delete your account and you can't, that might be a deceptive pattern. If you're trying to look at terms and conditions, but you can't click them or understand, that might be a deceptive pattern. And you're trying out a new product and you end up paying for it for months and months together, only to realize it once you are maybe auditing your annual accounts. That could be a deceptive patterns. These are just some, or maybe you thought you have got a deal of a lifetime, only to realize that it's available every single day. That could be a deceptive pattern. So we all encounter, I think now when we look at examples, you all might be realizing that we have been encountering these examples on a very regular basis. These are just some of the examples. And I think one last one is, I would ask this to everyone. When was the last time secured your trip and without feeling guilty about it, right? So there are 12 deceptive patterns that we observed and some variants of those. All of these are available and explained with lots of examples in the guide. The pattern that we found most prevalent in our study was privacy deception. 79% of the apps had some instances of privacy deception. I'll be very honest, as a designer myself, catering to privacy deception is hard. And I think there are new initiatives that are being taken everywhere in the world to come up with better design patterns to, to solve for it without affecting business metrics. But this is something that we found the most common pattern. The other ones that followed were interface interference and drift pricing. Uh, uh, let's see, where did we find these patterns in the journey of different products that we used? 39% patterns were found in the booking or subscription flows when you're just about to make a payment. Roughly over 25% of them were found in settings. 27% plus were found around browsing or searching, and it is over 8% around onboarding. 9 out of 12 deceptive patterns were observed in travel, followed by local delivery apps, which I think had about 8 of 12. So these two were categories where we found most amount of deceptive patterns. 9 of 9 e-commerce apps. And how we went about it is we took at the biggest players in every single category, which represent the big portion of the market share. 9 of 9 e-commerce apps we studied made it too difficult for users to delete their account. Deleting account was a common issue, and 100% of instances we found for confirm shaming, one of the deceptive patterns, were observed in travel booking. We did not find it anywhere else. Basically, we found it only in our study in travel booking products. 4 or 5 apps in health tech relied on time-based urgency to rush user into decisions, which is very surprising, because health is a very important subject which affects all of our livelihood. So, but we found 4 or 5 apps in health tech having time-based pressure, false urgency. We found 55% of instances of asymmetric choice observed in fintech. It's also called interface interference, again explained in detail in the resource. Interestingly, cab booking app showed the least frequency of deceptive patterns in our study. Conscious Patterns was born of this research, enables makers to build ethically conscious products for consumers. So like I was saying earlier, our endeavor in this entire assignment was not just to come up with observations on what we found, but actually empower makers to start being more conscious and create better choices. And that's why you'll see as I go through, we have tried to create lots of different tools and resources to actually help you create solutions and not just come up with observations on what we found. So this is what I think you can check out the website consciouspatterns.in. All these research insights are available. You can also download a full PDF report, which has extensive information about what we found out. It has explanations for all the 12 deceptive patterns that we found, with lots of examples and illustrations to make it simple to understand what these patterns actually are and how are they affecting our lives, and also inspiration on how you can actually solve some of them. One of our favorite parts of the tool is basically a conscious score calculator, and we try to make this conscious score calculator for intending it to be a beginning for anybody trying to evaluate, because the journey of improving something happens only when you are aware of what you're doing. So just with a simple set of questions, you can get a score on how conscious or how ethical your product design seem. And then you can get very actionable ideas on how to make it better. So that's a conscious score calculator. One of our very favorite part, again, is the ethical design gallery. We have curated lots of examples from across the internet on products which are doing really good work in trying to bring ethical design, trying to take conscious design decisions. And all these patterns are available as an inspiration for you to learn from and see how you can implement on your products. Also, since some of them are being done by some of the biggest companies across the world, many of these patterns are tested for performance. So there might be ones that have minimum impact to business metrics and might be able to help strike a good balance between meeting user goals and business needs. So these are the four things again summarizing that we have on the resource. You have all the findings available from this activity. You have a guide to all the deceptive patterns. We have an ethical inspiration gallery, and we have a conscious score calculator. And the report is out now. You can go and check it out. And would be hoping that this entire set of tools and resources will help us start being more conscious in our design and start making our apps more conscious. Thank you so much. Over to you, Namrata. You're on mute, Namrata.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin, for that insightful presentation. It's clear that the consumers now clearly have a lot to watch out for when they browse through their favorite apps. The report certainly raises several questions, and that is exactly what we would like to discuss with our panel of experts today. I would now hand this over to Ms. Manisha Kapoor, the CEO and Secretary General of ASCI, to take things ahead. Over to you, Manisha.
Thanks, Namrata, and thank you, Robin, for that presentation and deck. Good afternoon, everyone. Absolute pleasure to have many of you join us here today. And I hope that so far some of the nuggets that Robin has shared with all of us have, whetted our appetite to see, the full report and, all the many findings that it contains. So let's kind of, get into the topic with our panel. And we have an absolutely brilliant panel with us today. Let me just quickly introduce everyone. First, we have with us Rohit Kumar Singh, former Secretary of the Department of Consumer Affairs, Government of India. Rohit sir has been, we worked closely with him and his team over the past few years at the Consumer Affairs Ministry. He has a particular interest in, I think, technology where it meets advertising. And I think, dark patterns is certainly a great example of that. And it was under his guidance that the Department of Consumer Affairs released their guidelines. So we are really happy to have you here today, sir. Ashish Aggarwal, Vice President and Head of Public Policy at nasscom. Obviously nasscom and Ashish have been very central in the evolution of the digital landscape in India. So really happy to have him here to share his views. And of course, we have Robin, who you just heard, he and his team have put together all of this research. So I'll, now without any further kind of ado, get into the, asking them the right kind of questions and seeing what we can uncover some more. So one question I want to ask to actually all of you is that all of us use several of the apps, that have been actually covered in the study, and of course, many more apps that, could be our favorite apps as well. And for you, what is the experience that you have when you are browsing some of your favorite apps and you come across something that may bother you? And as people, in a sense, who are experts and who know a little bit more about dark patterns and perhaps the average consumer does, are there things that typically bother you the most or resonated perhaps in some of Robin's findings? So maybe I'll start with you, Rohit sir, if you could, go first on this.
So first of all, I want to compliment Robin for an excellent presentation. Just one bit of a problem there. He was, unnecessarily very kind to the cab aggregators. I think they are, one of the biggest culprits in this landscape. So don't pardon them, don't condone them. Number one.
Yeah, sir, I think what he has discovered is that some others are even more violative.
We ran an investigation into one of the bigger ones.
Yeah, I know.
I think they are the strongest into this deception, including what I would like to call dark patterns. I think what troubles me most is the subscription trap. And I think the companies are also wanting to use that more and more, because it's very difficult to get out of a subscription trap. And since it's directly related to revenue, it's the final, buying that is happening there. So to subscribe in, you need 1 click. To subscribe out, you need 9.5, 10, 11, 12, 13 clicks. I think that's the biggest challenge that we face. And I think it was part of the presentation also that, it's very difficult to get out of the presentation. Privacy is a very tricky issue. Overall, Indians, have a mixed attitude towards privacy. I mean, we want e-commerce sites and everything else to be protecting our privacy, and then in the evening we put everything on the Facebook. So you have to be very careful as to what. So I think the key issue there is express consent. Unless there is express consent, the website should not be allowed to share data. And with the new bill and a lot of effort that has been made by the government through various ministries, I think that is falling in place. But the key here is that the consumers have to be careful. If you are clicking left, right, and center on, do you want to share your location? Share this data, of course it will be shared. So these are very important. The subscription trap. Of course, there are many like false urgency and many things. But in all those things, of course, sites want to sell more. They want to manipulate your behavior, the consumer behavior. And there's a very thin line between marketing and unfair trading practice. So both the regulators, consumers, and the developers should keep that in mind. Where does that line lie beyond which it becomes an unfair or a manipulative practice? So if the entire ecosystem has the same definition in mind for, it's right till here because marketing, of course, has to be done. But beyond this is not acceptable. So if we are all on the same page for that, then it is very easy to check this. Of course, there will always be some violators who will deliberately do it. But most of the people who want to be within the four walls of law would not. So I think most of the law, unless you address the definitional issue, and we've seen it happening in online gaming and now the digital competition bill. I was there in a conference the other day. We said, unless there is clarity on definitions, there'll always be complications, and the guys who would be the happiest would be the lawyers making the interpretation of the definition. So you should have definition clarity on what is right, and beyond this point, it is unfair. Thank you, Manisha.
Thank you, sir, for that. Certainly very interesting. And you're right. I think defining these and, because they're also evolving, is certainly, I think, a challenge. Yeah. So same question to you, Ashish. What are the dark patterns that you've come across personally that bother you the most?
Yeah, so one, definitely, Robin, you made a good presentation. And for me, what stood out just in terms of the report is the fact that we as users and consumers would have felt certain dark patterns, and we would have our experiences. But this collective bringing together of across a spectrum of the nature of dark patterns, I think this, from a consumer point, it's kind of very important, because then you are able to relate that you are not alone in this, and this is actually widespread, and this is something that you need to be more conscious about. So I think that to me stood out as a key thing, as an insight, which probably struck me personally. And then also, some of the dark patterns could be very obvious, and we know they are there, and therefore, at least the good thing about them is that they make it tough for us, but we figure out a way to adjust to them, right? We do that. But then what worries me are the dark patterns which we don't understand, and we are deceived without knowing that we are being deceived. And I think that is something that that this report also probably highlights. And when we look at the full report, I think that would be an area for me personally as an interest. So these two things, Manisha, I think really stood out for me when I heard Robin's presentation.
Yeah, thanks. I think, yeah, interesting that, we don't know what we don't know. I mean, that is the window where we are completely, unaware as to the fact that we are being deceived. So Robin, I think to you now, and you of course lived with this now for the past, a few months. I mean, for you, is there something that, when you first saw it, surprised you in a way that you did not expect?
I think what I more than the fact of observing certain dark patterns or deceptive patterns, what stood out for me is I was reflecting who's behind it in making it happen. If it's happening in every app, who's behind it and what's causing it? Is it the designer? Is it the marketer? Is it the PM who's behind it? And I realized that possibly it's a collective job that everybody's doing, and maybe it's a part of the food chain. And I was just thinking about uh, one very interesting thing that I observed when I was looking at all the deceptive patterns is that maybe 50% of deceptive patterns were about manipulation of words and copy. So there are many other things, but just at a glance, I noticed everywhere copy was playing such a big role, whether it's confirm shaming, whether it's interface interference, so many places that was happening. And I started thinking that maybe it's something which is a shared responsibility of everybody in an organization to come up with it. And I was just thinking about what would it need to kind of cater it. And the thought that came to my mind is the way an organization holds its brand values together. That this is a brand value that we stand for. Possibly becoming conscious and digital needs to be uh, something of that sort that needs to be evangelized across the organization so that everybody can come together and do their bit and did not find any one person who could be held accountable for it in respective teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a, I mean, it's in that sense so prevalent and so ingrained sometimes. I mean, as you said rightly, I think in the beginning of your presentation, that sometimes we ourselves are conditioned and we don't necessarily recognize these as some things which are impairing our own choices. I'll come back to you, Rohit sir, and I think, we've seen these patterns seem to be widely present, and we've also discussed that they can actually, in some cases, be difficult to detect by the end user. Now, both ASCI and the government have guidelines. So ASCI has guidelines which are related to advertising, but the government's guidelines cover, many more aspects of marketing practices. Now, of course, there is, even I think at a regulatory end, a challenge therefore to detect, to detect this without the kind of, let's say, exercise that Robin and his team have undertaken. So what, in a sense, from an enforcement point of view, you think are some of the ways in which industry, government, regulators, self-regulators, I mean, how can we come together to, create some kind of an enforcement or deterrent awareness for these issues?
So two things. One is, like you said, the landscape is so huge that the government neither wants nor does it have the wherewithal to go through everything and every site and check it. So we work on the basis of course, our own detections, but also on the basis of complaints, that when people come to us and say, something is not right here, consumers or NGOs or even ASCI, saying, this is not right, then you take action. So one is, in such things, digital technology, like George Bernard Shaw said, thief is the artist, the police is just the critic. So we have to do that catch-up game. Manisha, you and I have discussed last year about crawling algorithms, which can, crawl through these sites and pick up those dark patterns. That could be one solution. But I think as a lifelong regulator, the best way to handle this is you catch one bad guy and make an example. And then try and make that as a deterrent for others not to do. And because you can't catch everyone, it's like the red light thing, of course you can put cameras and catch everyone, but वहां पे जब पुलिस वाला खुद रोक के फाइन करता है, that acts as a lot of deterrent for other people who are behind that car. So you have to make examples, you have to catch the bad guys. But that, in addition, there's a lot of education and awareness involved with all these stakeholders. And as the gentleman who made the presentation said, I think in all the companies, I have also worked in private sector for a while. between the marketing people, the business people, and the compliance people, there's always this conflict. And that the CEO or the management have to resolve, that where is the fine line between marketing and compliance? I mean, that can be difficult if the definitions are diffuse, but somebody has to, take care of that. And regulation will happen because you cannot take the consumers for a ride, of course, unless you are an Uber or an Ola. I mean, that too will catch. So yes, making examples of the guys who are habitual offenders, who are regular violators, and also working on the side of these algorithms and these new technologies to detect dark patterns, suo moto, and then telling them, not taking action at the first go, but telling them that we are watching. So please don't do this. That's how we did for social media guys. We didn't punish them initially. We said, don't do this, we are watching. But if you do it the next time, we'll catch you. That works. I mean, for such industries, such things will always work. Unless you're a Patanjali or something. I don't know. Manisha, you know it better.
All right. Thank you for that, sir. Robin, I'll come back to you. And I think, you were saying that even when you were looking at this, sometimes you didn't realize that, okay, doing this was actually, a dark pattern. So is there a danger of almost having a default template, which is currently prevalent, which actually employs some of these dark patterns to become the default, template? So how is this, I mean, how do we tackle something like this where it's not as if there is an intention necessarily to deceive the consumer, but it just seems to be a default menu or a default tray of patterns which are employed. I mean, how do you think this can be tackled?
Sure. I think that's an interesting one. I think very, very complimentary to what Rohit sir said. I think his thought process was starting it from the top, where we say, how does a CEO and stakeholders intervene? My thought is to start from the other end as well, where we say in any company trying to build digital products, designers are the people in the room representing user needs and advocating for them, right? And my observation is in most companies, they don't have a seat on the table or a say to voice out what's the right thing to do or what's the wrong thing to do, and have informed discussion. So I think one outcome, maybe some of these things that we're doing, the tools that we've created, and many other activities we do, if we start empowering makers, designers, and other makers, designers, product managers, to start having conscious discussions, intense, informed discussions around these choices on a regular basis in companies, right? Where the moment these patterns are recognized by everybody in the team, and the moment we are designing something that's supposed to be shipped, if the team comes and argues that, no, this is not the right thing to do, why are we doing it? Are we conscious? Is it compliant? If those discussions start happening, I think that will go a long way in people start being more aware about it, and it not being a norm is something that comes to my mind as a designer.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Robin, for that. Ashish, I'm just wondering, seeing all of this, and hopefully as the awareness around deceptive patterns also increases, do you think there is actually an opportunity for a player to use like a no deceptive pattern deployed on my website or app as actually a way to build, consumer engagement and loyalty? Do you think consumers are would value something like this? Are we there yet?
So I think it's a journey, and to be honest, in India, the conversation really picked up about 2 years ago, when Ministry of Consumer Affairs really started interacting and industry, and there were a lot of consultations. So it's the actual guidelines which came out. All the ecosystem in the digital landscape, which is relevant for this, participated in that conversation. So one takeaway in that exercise itself was that, look, when as industry you have participated in this conversation, there is a broad sense of agreement and understanding that these are dark patterns. So I think that was step one. But then to Manisha, to your question, it's a very interesting and classical problem in many markets, not just this dark pattern related stuff in terms of digital landscape, is that when a default set of practices are already in place at a certain level, then for somebody to stand up and really take that effort to stand out and then see that how this will be great for business, I think it presents challenges at various levels. So I think it's going to start with one big portion around awareness. And when I say awareness, it will be more at a founder level, at the CXO levels in the companies, when this seemingly obvious linkage between no dark pattern and good for business will become a little more clearer. And then through that, it will flow to the product teams, and then the compliances team will get empowered. So what Mr. Rohit mentioned, right, that there are these various functions, but finally it goes from the CXO level. So I think that has to happen, and I think there's no silver bullet. It will be a range of approaches. So we already discussed the stick in terms of, there is a law, and to be honest, even before the guidelines came, the law is there, because you can't deploy deceptive practices, period. So I think this just puts a little more color on what exactly we mean by that to start with. And then I think we also need to, and which I think, Robin, your report does, to say that, which are these good practices, which are these good examples which stand out. So I think it's very important from a NASSCOM perspective to take those people into the conversation and bring the other people who are probably lagging, and then create this shared understanding that, look, this is something which is not just a legal requirement, but it is something that is going to pay in the long term, in terms of business. And then we need to nurture this. So I think this entire approach is something, as NASSCOM, we feel that we should be proactively driving. And I think it'll take some effort and time, but I think there is a lot of interest in the industry to do this. But it's a classical problem of how do we get those first few people, right, who will do this. So I think that's where I think what you said, it's a very good start. And this report itself, I think we should be talking more and more with a lot of these players who are in the ecosystem, and understand, what are their internal challenges and frictions, which might be, because there are a lot of internal champions in a lot of these companies, identifying them and working with them. So I think these are some of the thoughts that we would think are worth pursuing, Manisha.
Thanks, Ashish. Rohit, so I'll come back to you. While you were at the helm of affairs at DOCA, you had organized a very interesting event called the Hackathon at IIT BHU, getting a bunch of young students to create some technology solutions to detect dark patterns. I think it was very interesting for all of us to hear a little bit more about, what that experience was like, what were some of the outcomes, and how do you see that, again, helping and becoming one of the key inputs in this journey of uncovering dark patterns.
So I think we started in October of 2023, and when we were digging deep into these dark patterns and how they were affecting consumer behavior, the next logical question arose as to what next. We know these are dark patterns, like Robin's report also says, but what next? One, of course, is the developer side. And as he said, either top down or bottom up, you try and put some sense into people who are designing these things, that please refrain, and this is the line. But if that is not helping, if that is not working, and since we were the Consumer Affairs Ministry, what should the consumer do? How does he or she detect? So we realized that let's do a hackathon, and IIT BHU was just the nodal institution for that. We ran a countrywide hackathon where 500 engineering and other institutions participated. And the finals happened in BHU. I was also present there in February. And there are some very unique solutions. We wanted the students and the researchers to develop, software plugins. By using them, the consumer should be able to detect that this site is indulging into dark patterns, this site is not indulging into dark patterns. And some very interesting results came. I think IIT Kharagpur team got the first prize. I was present, so I remember. And they have very interesting product and they ran through, the hundreds of pages like Robin was showing, like 14,000 screenshots. I think they did much more than that. And they realized that, these sites are indulging into this and it is for the user. But before we could launch that as a government sponsored product for the users to detect dark patterns, we wanted to do more due diligence because it has liability issues. I mean, the government cannot afford to go wrong. So it's still being tested. And we, in fact, have sponsored. I was just chatting with the director of IIT BHU, the new one, Mr. Mahapatra, I think. And he's come from IIT Kharagpur. And I said, why don't you set up a dark patterns lab, which is like a permanent facility in IIT BHU to let students and researchers do. So I had heard of a similar thing in Australia, and I thought it might be a good idea to be this as a nodal facility. So there, if you test and get some kind of a certified, product to detect these patterns, it will be a good idea. Of course, like everybody knows, and Ashish ji knows the best, these things are so dynamic that you always have to be on your toes. So this cannot be a one-time product. It has to keep evolving. And so it's a very interesting exercise. It did two things. It, of course, helped us get some 10 odd very good solutions, which are, 80-90% ready. The other thing was it created a lot of awareness amongst these youngsters, and they must have spoken to their families and their communities that about the thing called dark patterns. And now people are getting aware that, oh, this is how we are getting manipulated. So these two-pronged objectives were there. And I think we succeeded quite a bit in pushing those efforts towards these two objectives.
Yeah,
Thanks.
interesting. And I think what you're saying is absolutely valid that, it's not a one-time exercise because, before you know it, and by the time you've developed a solution, things have already moved ahead. So, in that sense, are we always playing a catch-up game could be a question, that we need to ask. So Robin, coming back to you, I think one of the objectives when we started this exercise was, of course, to map what are the existing dark patterns, but also to provide some solutions, in terms of the gallery of inspiration to suggest alternatives and the scoring metric. So I know you touched briefly upon these in your presentation, but I was wondering if you can take us through a little bit more thinking, of the thinking that went into this, and how do you want industry or students or designers to actually use these resources?
So I think it starts with a fundamental belief that it's always easy to be a critic and be an armchair activist, right? And it doesn't help sometimes. I think I also empathize with the people building these apps. Like sometimes these are intentional, and there could be sometimes where they might not always be 100% intentional because there isn't enough awareness around what you're trying to do. So I think the first step, like we're all trying to do, is bring awareness, but and the thought process was that if we just leave people to say, don't do these patterns, is it going to be enough, right? And how can we actually take a step further and say, we understand that they're done for business impact. There's an outcome and impact to every decision that's being done, every journey, every interaction in an app has that impact. But can we come together and create resources or tools for everyone to understand how to actually solve for them in a holistic manner, which is where I think two key components which you mentioned, Manisha, as well, and really enjoyed working together and co-creating these tools with the entire team in ASCI. My favorite tool, and I think we've put in a lot of effort there, is the conscious score calculator. And the idea was that if you don't know you're doing anything and you don't understand all the deceptive patterns or the terminology and identify, just answer a couple of simple questions and do a self-reflection on how your app is doing on this, right? How you're standing on that scale of being ethical versus using a lot of deceptive patterns, how conscious you are. And the idea is that once you're aware of it, that's a great first step that you say, okay, we're not doing so well. what do we do now? And that's where the inspiration in form of ethical gallery comes in. Okay, these are the things that we're not doing well. How do we solve for them? And then there is a ton of inspiration from people who are doing good work in the space from across the internet, categorized to and tagged to every single deceptive pattern that you might have, which can help you create better solutions. So yeah, I think the idea is starting from education, awareness, and also solutions, and we can possibly close the entire loop and help people create a real difference was the idea. And really looking forward to see how people can use it. Are these tools actually effective? And maybe that might inspire us to create a lot more of these resources for people to actually make a difference.
Yeah, and I think what is really interesting is to have that gallery of inspiration, because then those are also businesses who have similar objectives, right? They want to onboard consumers, they want people to buy more, etc. But they may have found a way to do it which does not impair, informed decision making. So there are great examples from within the industry and from within the design space itself that could hopefully become the new norms. And I think that would, in a sense, also be the endeavor of this exercise. Of course, it's the first step, but hopefully it takes us a little closer to that. Ashish, coming back to you, we a few months ago we were discussing the DPDP Act, and even this study shows that privacy concerns seem to be the top deceptive pattern that seems to have been deployed. So now, given the new DPDP Act and some of the patterns that we see in these apps, do you see a need for apps to overhaul some of their interfaces to be compliant not just with the Consumer Protection Act and its practices, but also with the DPDP Act? So do you feel that that's something which needs to be thought through a little bit more in terms of the new data protection? One is the policies coming into place, but also I think consumers becoming more aware and conscious of privacy as a concern.
So it's interesting, Manisha, you asked that, because I think there are I think at least a couple of good parallels to draw from. So in this journey of operationalizing this right of privacy, where we have seen this law coming in, so just look at the definition of consent. So in the section 6 of the law, it actually says that the consent given by data principal shall be free, specific, informed, unconditional, unambiguous, with a clear affirmative action, and so on and so forth. So the standard of consent, which wasn't there in India, is now firmly in place in the law. So, and then when you relate this to just the interface, what we have realized is that it is not just about the interface. It goes to the core of your operating model and business model. And that's at times that can be tough and challenging. So what we are seeing is that with privacy, that realization and that adaptation is now happening. So I think when we talk about dark patterns or deceptive patterns, I believe it will be a similar journey where you will start with the interface, but then you will realize that if you are relying on certain deceptive patterns, and in a way that kind of was core to your model itself in terms of how you are doing certain things, then it's a little more than that. And I think we are seeing that when industry is doing data mapping in relation to the DPDPA Act. And I think probably that's why when I say that this journey of making businesses dark pattern free, I think it will be more layered, and I think that is one effort. The other part of this is that we talk about privacy and we also talk about AI ethics. So the focus has shifted to the people who are the guardians of this within the organization. And at least in the larger organization, there are dedicated data protection officers. In the AI development cycle, now there is a focus on people who are involved with the coding and other decisions to really focus on how they themselves look at biases and ethics. So similarly, I think people who are involved in the product design, in the marketing, these dark patterns, these are not something which we should expect will come intuitively to everybody to say that, how we can sidestep them or avoid them. But I think this requires little more effort in terms of training. So there is a lot of science to it, to say that, how can people who are interested with the job know that these are the things that you should not be doing and these are the best practices that you should be following. So I think there are some good parallels, and I think it requires a lot more effort to scale it. Now, one positive thing is that the digital landscape is growing and expanding rapidly. There are newer players entering, and there is a huge interest in disrupting the market in positive ways. So I think that's where I think there is a lot of space for us to say that, it is a competitive market. There is a place for creating a USP out of this. And I think along in this journey, when people are doing this operationalization of the DPDPA, I think it's just natural to say that let's go beyond just consent and privacy from a perspective of addressing that, but can we expand the canvas at the same time to do this at a larger scale in terms of deception and deceptive patterns? So I think that is some of the conversation that is interesting conversation with the industry.
Yeah, certainly. I think, as we've all been saying, both the industry itself is changing, but so is regulation. And I think, where do you find that balance to be compliant, disruptive, but in a way that moves the industry forward? I'll come to you, Rohit, sir. And I think one of the things that we did not cover very consciously in this, in this exercise was really about influencers, since we was looking at apps rather than social media, which is where they are, they are present much more. But the role of influencers in dark patterns in terms of, disguised advertising, we see that as one concern. We also see a lot of influencers, again, not maybe related to advertising, but talking about things that they may not really know about. So whether it's, giving advice on financial matters, giving advice on health matters, et cetera, et cetera. So, how do we, so again, while there are guidelines in place, how do you see this evolving? How do you see, where it's headed right now? What's your read on that?
So I think when we came up with the guidelines, we, as Ashish was also saying in the other case, we had a lot of discussion with stakeholders because we realized that this is a nascent industry, is growing very fast. CAGR is like 40%, and mostly the young people are involved. So if you regulate it too tightly, it will kill the industry. So we didn't want to do that. So we said, let's talk to them. And I think the key, which is deriving out of the fundamental principle of the Consumer Protection Act, is unfair trading practice is a key phrase there. Yeah. And of course, your domain of misleading advertisement directly flows from there. So I think the key word there is misleading. So now if you're a social media influencer and you are peddling a product or peddling, whatever, a service, then you have to disclose whether you have an interest in that or it's your fair and honest opinion. So we focused on disclosure. We said, if you're involved in any way, directly, indirectly, financially, otherwise, with that product, with that company, then you have to disclose. That is one part. The other part is very interesting that you said on health and finance related influencers. There's also the whole issue of, knowledge. So if you're peddling, a protein or a medicine or a nutraceutical, are you qualified to do that? Have you studied medicine? Do you have a diploma in pharmacy? How are you saying that? So we said that if you are doing a health product or a financial product, then you have to, disclose your own qualification as well. But because SEBI, there is multiple jurisdiction when it comes to financial products. So we then passed it on to SEBI, and I think they are doing a reasonably good job on, of course, they're tightening the screws now and say you can't push, this mutual fund or that stock, and then you have to disclose. And I think they have also taken action against some of them. So in a nutshell, the key issue in terms of social media influencers is, of course, you have to talk to them, you have to engage them. And as Robin was mentioning about app developers, sometimes they do it because they don't know it's illegal to do it. So you have to educate them, you have to engage with them. If somebody is doing it despite that, then of course, compliance and action comes into play, and you have to take action. And then disclosure in terms of their own qualifications to talk about something. That is important. So I think these were the principles on which we worked on influencers. We kept talking to them. I went to Mumbai and talked to like 400 of them for a few hours. I got 50 of them to sit in Delhi and meet my minister and the INB minister, then Anurag Thakur, and talk to them that, of course, you are important, you're doing a good job, but that's where the line is. So don't cross the line. So it was more of a nudging them in the right direction. Most of the time it works, but sometimes I don't know what the Elvis Presley kinds, it may not work, Elvis Yadav or whatever his name is, it may not work, because then you know that I want to cross the line. So then you have to Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. Ashish, coming to you again, with AI coming in and just getting, so much more prevalent, all of us using it in some way in our work, in our lives. How do you see the role of AI in, I don't know, will it further complicate the issue of dark patterns? Can it create a whole new world of dark patterns that we cannot imagine right now? Can it also help tackle dark patterns? I mean, how do you see AI coming in, and what are the different roles it can play in this, in this space?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of these conversations in many domains, not just related to consumer protection. And I think a lot of this conversation finally boil down to the fact that AI is a technology. So it really goes back to the incentives of the actors, and if those incentives are aligned, then we are more sure of positive outcomes than otherwise, right? So I think that's the fundamental market dynamic that we should aim to sustain and grow. Having said that, I think the challenges pretty much, and also the opportunities, that what without AI would take a lot of resources to do and to scale up, now can be done and scaled up using AI. So I've not come across specific use cases where AI has been used for either deception or for eliminating or minimizing deception. But I think it's a very interesting thought. I think I'm going to certainly go back and go a little more deeper into this, since you have now brought this out. But it's also just to relate the topic of AI to the larger aspect of technology, and linking back to my earlier comment on privacy. What we saw was that once privacy came into the main fold as a matter to be really, taken much more seriously in terms of how we think about the business processes, we have a whole suite of privacy enhancing technologies. And this has now become quite a significant industry in itself. And the entire approach is that it's no longer legal and standards only, it is legal, standards, and technical enablement. Because a lot of the solutions will lie in technology. And to have any real sense of effective enforcement and compliance, you will need to rely on those technologies. So my sense is that in a lot of these things, we will see a use of technology to both enable better compliances and also to enable better enforcement. So, and I'm sure AI has those use cases, and it will be great to identify them. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Robin, I think staying on the same track, one solution certainly is, to undertake consumer education and make them more aware, etc., etc. But the fact is that at the end of the day, the burden of understanding how deceptive patterns work, or, what technologies are deployed, or what is choice architecture, I think it's possibly an unreasonable expectation to have that consumers must understand this better as well, right? So in a sense, again, is technology the solution? And have you seen, or do you know of, or do we know that people are working on technologies to actually also detect, identify, and perhaps correct the existing dark patterns that are there? So anything that you know from the world of tech that you could share with us?
That's an interesting one, and I think the answer in this question might not be what somebody would like to hear from a product and tech guy. At least my views on that. But I before I come to my overall thoughts, I want to just add to something that Ashish said and kind of share a perspective on this. And one of the big trends that's evolving already, and I think it's going to be accelerated in a big way when it comes to interfaces, is something called contextual UI. Basically, on any product, depending on the context of my interaction with that product, what is the purpose I'm trying to do, and what is the history of my usage and behavior that product has. You and I might be using the same product for the same purpose, but having very different interfaces which are dynamically personalized, right? And I think what I'm worried about adding to AI and this entire contextual AI trend is that tomorrow, if we have to do this activity again, possibly after a year, I'm just wondering, will we be able to even identify conclusively deceptive patterns? Because all of us might be seeing different things, possibly based on the power of personalization in different applications. And which is concerning that even identification might be difficult, and the power of deceptive patterns might be far more. Like, for example, if there is a pattern which is uh, using messaging to deceive me into something. Now, tomorrow, if that my data is used to, and the context is used to make that messaging 10x more powerful and persuasive, I'm really worried about the consequences that could have of using AI and certain technology to do that. Um, on the flip side, one of the biggest problems in technology analyzing, although there is like amazing amount of capabilities that are coming with Gen AI in terms of image recognition and how it can actually analyze even visuals. But the problem that at least I see, and at least that's a limitation of my thinking, is that most of the interactions that any user does are behind logins and experiences. Right? They're not publicly available pages, which is what makes real-time analysis of these patterns a little harder. So at least personally, I've not seen a lot of tech-driven initiatives here yet. And while I was thinking about it, as we might all not like it, but what came to me maybe consumer awareness and is one of the key things beyond regulation. And I was just kind of reminded of the popular line from Doka's initiatives itself is Jago, Grahak Jago. I think unfortunately maybe we might have to again do a bit of that is what comes to my mind.
Yeah, fair enough. So looks like, there is really a need for consumers themselves to kind of stand up for them, for themselves. And I guess, as regulators and self-regulators and people who are interested in building an ethical future, we kind of, support consumers in that journey. One question for all of you before we move on to some of the audience questions is, consumers are more aware today, definitely. We all know that. But ironically, also, are they more vulnerable? I mean, so are consumers more vulnerable today than they were a few years back, or are they less vulnerable than they were a few years back? I just wanted to hear, each of your perspectives. Maybe we can start with you, Rohit, sir.
Oh, much more vulnerable. I've been saying it for the last 2-3 years that when we were buying from these corner stores, mom and pop shops, there was this inherent relationship between the seller and the buyer. And if something went wrong, because the seller knew your family, you knew the seller's family, and everything was a different social dynamic. But with the advent of these big stores, whether physical or digital, the whole power equation between the consumer and the seller has changed. And consumer has become smaller and the sellers have become more powerful, whether it's in the digital domain or the mall kind of sellers. So yes, consumer is much more vulnerable. That is why we need to very fiercely protect the interest of the consumer. And in addition to Jago Grahak Jago, as government, as regulators, as self-regulators like ASCI, nasscom, watchdogs, we need to put this fear of God in the mind of the seller side, that please don't do that because it is happening. And I was just analyzing the data the other day of the number of complaints that we get on our National Consumer Helpline. The number of complaints pertaining to e-commerce has grown up from 8% to 52% in last 6 years. So half of the complaints that we get on National Consumer Helpline today pertain to the e-commerce companies, which shows, and the gross number is also increased because we have made it available in 17 languages and people are now more comfortable. Of course, just the tip of the iceberg, but people are complaining more. Of course, they are becoming more aware. They want to complain and get it resolved. So my firm and very conscious take on this question is yes, much, much more vulnerable now. And we need to fiercely protect their interest.
Thanks. Ashish, what's your view?
See, the ecosystem is rapidly evolving. During COVID, for example, we saw there was a huge shift towards digital, which was perhaps, which could have taken a few more years otherwise. And traditionally, we think that, elderly are more vulnerable and children and all of that. But it's not necessarily true. Some of the people who are experts in this area, they themselves have had personal experiences where maybe it's overconfidence or it is something else, but you find that you are at the receiving end of some of this. And in some of the areas where the sectors are tightly regulated, these things actually come out a little more and they also get tackled a little faster. So for example, one of the area is really around digital lending, where sometimes you are making payments and you don't know that you have taken credit. And then it can be a spiral in terms of more credit, and then you are in a trap. So I think there are certain areas where this directly intersects with money and it can grow at a substantial level. Then I think there are these outright frauds which are also happening, which in a way it's all part of the same continuum. So I think this is definitely something is going to become more and more serious. I mean, we talked about the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. The Act recognizes that for children privacy, we will need to have a very different standard. So therefore, I think when the way I would look at it is that it's both the things are happening. One, definitely, as we are reaping the benefit of digitalization, we are becoming more empowered, and I think at the same time we are using more and more different kind of services. So across services, I would say that we are more susceptible to risk. But at the same time, I think there is also a sense that if the markets themselves are able to take some of the corrective actions, then consumers, the switching cost is relatively less. So from a consumer point of view, it's very easy in a lot of situations. I'm not talking about the subscription example, but I'm talking about a lot of the situations where you can actually walk out. And I think that has to become a trend. And I think from that point of view, I would think that the glass is half full. But I think this is something where consumers' awareness with studies like this should definitely grow. And that is something that that should probably help address consumer trust.
Robin, what do you think?
I think two very interesting aspects that come to my mind on this question is that one is that I see that the attention span of all of us is reducing with the kind of content we are consuming on social media, everything. So our ability to focus, evaluate, take a conscious decision on everything we're seeing is reducing generally overall. Right? And that means that if there are deceptive patterns, possibly because we're not able to focus as much and be as conscious as we were, the risk is higher. I feel that that's happening already, and it's going to be more and more prevalent. Another very interesting aspect to look at it is that I think we keep talking about in the last couple of years in India about so many new people coming to the internet and starting to use it. We keep talking about the next billion users. And when we talk about these new users coming to the internet, many of them are not as savvy to using digital products as the existing, let's say, 100 million users who are using all of these apps are. And now what's more concerning is for these newer users, the risk of them falling into deceptive patterns and getting affected, taking uninformed decisions is very concerning because their maturity on using these products is low. So I think both these two aspects kind of are what come to my mind when it comes to thinking about will this risk increase over a period of time and how we should be cautious about it and do proactive initiatives to tackle it.
Yeah, no, so good. I think good discussion on consumer vulnerabilities and how we can expect those to evolve as well. So I think rightfully the question of so many new users coming into the system, and you don't, and I think Ashish, your point also well made. Anecdotally, one hears of so many. You read it in the newspapers where people who work actually in the tech sector, or let's say in the banking sector, etc., also get scammed. So it's certainly, I think, the sophistication of those who intend to mislead the consumer or cheat them in some ways also growing, and therefore that also points to that vulnerability. Rohit, so one question that's come in also is on consumer reviews, and I know that while Rohit, we were also discussing this as a part of this exercise, and I think for us, without investigation of a significant sort, again, that's something which is difficult to assess. Whether these are disguised advertisements or whether they are genuine consumer reviews, or are they paid to kind of put out a certain review. We know that in the US, for example, there have been there are multiple sites that actually where you can buy reviews, and they get kind of integrated with different platforms, etc. Rohit, a question to you is that I know that DOCA is also doing some work, in this area. You started some conversations around this. But again, how do we look at reviews? Because that forms the basis of decision making in so many apps and websites where you can't physically see the product. So you are really dependent on consumer reviews, and they are a form of this, could be a form of disguised advertising. Again, are we in a sense dependent on organizations to do the right things and to, of course, bring pressure to kind of do that? Or again, will there be technologies you think that can actually detect this?
So it's a combination of both. And what we did was about a year and a half back, we said, let's formulate a standard as to, these are the things, this is the checklist that the e-commerce sites will have to adhere to follow before we can say that they have a good system of managing fake reviews. So we asked BIS to develop a standard. I think it's called 18000 or something. But we didn't want to force it down the throats of all the e-commerce companies initially, because we wanted to give them time to understand this and try and adhere to those processes and systems. So the way it works in government is, you make a standard when you're looking for a quality in a product or a service. Is first you make it voluntary, and people who are adhering to it, they can flaunt it on their websites. We conform to these standards. It's like, if you recall, about a decade back, or maybe 7-8 years back, we used to have this very sign, certified, that if you are making payment of this and this site is very sign certified, that means your payment is safe, your credit card data will not be shared. So something of that sort. So I think more we wanted to give them a year to have these processes and systems within. So it's like having almost like a compliance person within the organization for fake reviews, the system of the definition and how the reviews will be done. Very elaborate exercise. So that is done, and I think people who are in DOCA now should start working towards making it compulsory, because like you said, it's very important. Most of the time, the name of the platform, you trust the platform, you don't know the seller, and you just see those stars and you click buy. So the menace of fake reviews can be very challenging for a normal consumer. And so we need a protocol which these sites have to follow. And then you need, but it's more in the nature of self-compliance. And it's like a quality standard that my product is this BIS certified. Enforcement can be very difficult because, as Robin was also mentioning, and I also wrote about it in, AI. When you use AI, the boundaries are diffuse and it's targeted, and you don't know what is happening in terms of who's doing what. So it'll compliance driven from the government side will be very difficult on fake reviews. So you have to nudge them to be self-compliant, but give them these standards thing. So that is my take on this.
Manisha, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Robert, for that. That has to happen at least once or twice, doesn't it? Okay, so an interesting question that's coming from the audience, Ashish, for you, is that, do you think this is something that now needs to be introduced in schools and colleges, as educating the next generation that's pretty much born in this age? I mean, should it actually be part of the curriculum, education and awareness on this?
Yeah, so I think we are in a digital world. A lot of these are life skills at certain level. So I think that's how we should probably think about them. And these are not cut and paste over the syllabus and curriculum. So I think I remember years back we used to talk about financial management as something that needs to be ingrained in some schooling and stuff. But I don't know whether it is just being part of a formal curriculum. I think it starts everywhere as being parents being aware and educated is the first step. And I think yeah, so I don't want to be prescriptive about what I think will work, but I think definitely there is a lot of merit and scope in thinking about it, because as sometimes companies, they identify their future customers in young kids. So I think we as conscious citizens should also identify future well-aware and knowledgeable citizens very early. So I think it's pretty much similar, right? So that's what I would think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a final question that we can take, I think we discussed some of this earlier, but Robin, you spoke about it, so I'll put it back to you. That is there a demographic that is more susceptible to dark patterns? Do you feel the older generation is particularly vulnerable?
Yeah, I think, like we discussed, I think the older generation and possibly new to internet users both are more susceptible because because of being able to focus and being able to be very conscious, and the other because of the new exposure. I definitely think they're more susceptible, and I'm like we discussed with the power of AI being possibly misused to create more effective deceptive patterns in the next couple of years. It's going to be worrying to see how it shapes up, and we have to take conscious steps to avoid that.
Rohit sir, I'll leave the last word with you. In terms of the discussion that's happened today, and this being one step in trying to map, what is the extent of dark patterns? Because in a sense, we all knew that we encounter them, but I think we also did not expect that the scale and the prevalence of it would be so widespread. So just from you, I think a final word on where you think we can go from here, and both in terms of how do we now take this and build forward?
I think the focus should be, more on the diagnosis side than the treatment side, because as Robin was also saying, it's more jago grahak jago kind of a thing. You let people be aware that, these are the things we should be wary of, and then let them take a call. But as we were discussing the other day, and Ashish ji was there, and he also mentioned it just now in the discussion, and I was saying the last time that, this is a continuum. So it starts from a soft, a very innocuous looking, misleading practice, and it leads gradually to a cyber crime. So you have to hit it here, because the moment you start saying, no, this is just a small thing, this is just marketing gimmick, But then it starts building up and it leads to, and you have been attending Supreme Court cases on, similar things. So you have to hit it there. And I'm very happy and very glad that Supreme Court took notice of whatever they did. So similar thing has to happen here. So it has to be a combination, of course, of carrot and stick, as someone said. But on the diagnosis side, on creating awareness, on letting all the stakeholder be aware, be on the same page on, this is a dark pattern, this is acceptable, and this is not. That is the future direction. And I know I worked very hard on hackathon, but the thing is so dynamic that the moment you develop a plugin, the smart people like Robin will find a way of, circumventing the plugin. So I used to be a hacker, so I know how it works. So it's more on creating awareness. And like he said, he mentioned a very important thing. He said our attention spans are decreasing. It is so true. Is shrinking. So we need to, especially when you are logging in or subscribing in or making a payment, those important things, you should be paying probably more attention, like you do while driving or while doing other things which can impact your life or limb safety. So there you should be paying more attention, you should be more focused. And I would end with what he suggested, that only Jago Grahak Jago can help. Thank you.
Yeah, so certainly I think on the highway of the internet and the apps, I think it's a good analogy that you have to be alert the way you are when you're driving. And I think, when you're browsing, probably need to be a little bit more alert than even that, going forward. So no, just wanted to thank all of you, I think, for, all the insights and this very open and frank discussion that we've had. And it's clear that, dark patterns are probably here to stay. They may get more complex as we go ahead. But there are actionable steps that can be taken and must be taken. Just work on more conscious designs that put consumer interests really at the heart of interface designs, and whether it's app and whatever is the online kind of experience. So I would extend a heartfelt thank you to all of my panelists for being here and spending their time. A big thank you to all the audience for being here. I would encourage all of you to visit the website consciousdesigns.in and check out the ethical design gallery, more findings from the report, and all of this hopefully which allows the consumer to be more informed and confident about the choices that they make online. The scoring tool is there as well. So again, that would be something that could be very useful if you are either a designer or a curious consumer to know if your app is the app that you use probably every day, are there patterns that you may not be aware of. I think the scoring tool is simple enough for you even as a consumer to evaluate some of these apps. So I think as we move forward, as ASCI, we are committed to bringing you more such conversations and building these conversations around some of these new tricky topics that are emerging. And our quest is, how do we keep consumers safe? How do we build their confidence in the whole online world, that they are able to browse and enjoy really also the bounty that it brings to them, because it certainly has a lot of benefits. If we are able to be more confident of the online space, that's a huge win-win for both consumers and the industry. So thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to your support to ASCI and the ASCI Academy. And we promise to bring you more important conversations such as the one that we've had today, more conversations that matter. So thank you all and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.